Well, this is it. The final chapter of my little venture into the Tulgey Wood. It's been nice venturing off into more fictional subjects now and then. I might try it again sometime. Foreword. It has been 6 weeks since I left the Tulgey Wood, or rather I should say, since we left. Charlotte hasn't taken well to the mundane world beyond her homeland. She was apparently born and raised in that forest, likely a good deal of why she knows the place so well. Makes it all the more difficult to decide whether to share what I found in the record. If it is accurate, and if she reads it, and believes it, I doubt she can ever return home. Regardless of that particular outcome, the account has been deciphered and transcribed in full. I intend to prepare an abridged version, and I suppose this will be its informal foreword. There are a number of ways to potentially interpret what follows. Perhaps it is the ravings of a madman, or the delusions of a man in the grip of potent hallucinogens. Then again, there is the possibility that it is the record of a slightly deranged genius that found a way to see things just a little too clearly. I suppose I must leave that for the readers to decide. What follows is a series of key entries taken from the encrypted journal. Each has been numerically labeled, and they are in mostly chronological order, but there are several entries that have been deliberately left out. Such entries were either lacking in important or relevant information, or they contained details that might be used to uncover the writer's identity, or they were simply too incoherent to properly follow. What remains is sufficient, I think, to convey more or less what took place, or at least what the person in question believed took place. Entry 0. I write this at the end and place it at the beginning. A warning encrypted after my first warning, scarcely hidden. To any who insist upon proceeding further in decoding this record, know that you will not like what you uncover. I hope that it is all just a mad dream on my part, and that the assumptions at the outset were incorrect. It would be so much easier if it was nothing more than a misguided nightmare. To whoever finds this book, know that I have enclosed a number of images within a concealed pocket in the back cover. A thorough investigation should reveal this. The images were captured using a small, highly portable photoeidetic device, sufficient resolution for scientific work, but lacking in scope and depth. Perhaps this is a mercy. Many of the images are disquieting. Yet they should aid in understanding this record, should you wish to proceed despite the warnings. There is no time left. I must act before I am irrevocably ensnared. I wish you safe travels. Safer than mine, at least. Entry 1. Located another tumbledown today. Fits within the expected range based upon prior mapping. Architectural style suggests theoretical late era. Sophisticated structural points are evident where erosion and overgrowth have spared them. The same question asserts itself if the postulated timeline is accurate. Why would a civilization progress steadily and flourish for centuries only to vanish so abruptly? The obvious answer would be a cataclysm, but there are no markers in even the late-era findings. No secret caches of coin, no improvised dwellings of scavenged rubble, no carbonized layers. A disease might be responsible, but even this would lead to sufficient upheaval to cause at least a few of the usual signs. Entry 2. Day 5 at the Tumbledown site. Mapping is nearly complete. Needed to avoid local predators on 7 occasions now. Weave Cloak seems effective thus far. No apparent degradation of underlying tum-tum components upon last inspection. A pity the lining needs to be concealed beneath mundane cloth. Still, locals might consider it a sacrilege to strip a tum-tum sapling down for its sound-dampening bark. Probably foolish to write this down, but the encryption should be more than adequate in the event of unfriendly eyes. Entry 3. Morning, late. Found something remarkable. It was in a sealed casket, only located due to the aesthetic incongruity. Doubtful anybody unfamiliar with tumbledown architecture would have ever noticed. Preliminary translation efforts suggest very late-era writing. I am hesitant to make too many assertions as yet, but the record is tantalizing to say the least. Provided the translation is sound, the record was made by one who described themselves as the last to leave the city. There is a warning about some sort of delusion or delirium. Most intriguing of all, there appears to be a statement, almost a lamentation, about being nearly out of an extract required to stave off this delirium. The consuming question now is, what is this extract, and what sort of delirium is it meant to counteract? Entry 4. 3 weeks now, and still precious little progress. I've been through just about every reliable record from any Tulgey Wood at this point, and there has been no clear reference to a delirium counteracted by a chemical extract. The nearest thing has been the omnipresent outgrabe of the Momoraths and the burbling and whiffling effects of the Jabberwock. However, those are sonic effects, and there is no known chemical counteractant. For the past few days, I've dipped into more esoteric and unreliable accounts. It is possible I've found something, but I do not like the implications. There is a particularly foul sort of fungus found in certain parts of Tulgey Woods. Unlike most of the more potent varieties, this is not found in the depths, but rather in the tumbledowns, particularly in high places. Its appearance is unassuming, and it is easily overlooked. When bruised, it gives off a noxious stench that is sufficiently off-putting for sensible people to avoid it. Anybody who samples this vile little toadstool is said to be plagued by terrible waking nightmares until the effect wears off. There are a few troubling details in the very limited accounts of these nightmares. The hallucinations were often described with puzzling clarity and sometimes a sense of awakening, as though one's eyes had been opened or a veil torn away. The potential implications are disturbing, to say the least. I shall endeavor to obtain a few samples of this particular fungus and pay for a detailed chemical analysis outside of the Tulgey Wood. It might require calling in a few favors, but I have no other real leads to pursue at this point. Entry 5. The situation grows ever more perplexing. I should summarize, if only to gather my thoughts properly. It was no great trouble finding a few suitable samples of Dreamer's Bane, the aforementioned fungus. The sealed containers prevented the smell from causing any issues during transportation. By the time I reached the laboratory, only a couple of days had elapsed from the most recent collection and less than a week from the first. The samples were intact and appeared only slightly withered. The objectionable smell was entirely absent, which is odd for a sealed container. Presumably, the responsible volatiles are extraordinarily unstable. Analysis of 6 distinct samples taken from 6 different tumbledowns showed a high degree of chemical consistency. This suggests that, within the span between a week and 2 days, there is no significant chemical degradation in this fungal species. Some attempts to grow cultures from the fungal tissues were attempted, but these all ended in complete failure. If there is a factor required for proper growth, it is not duplicated within conventional growth media or a basic laboratory setting. As for chemical analysis, several novel compounds were extracted, but none of these had any demonstrably neurotoxic effects. After multiple analyses, I went so far as to consume small amounts of the freshest sample. There was no discernible effect upon my mental state. Consumption of oil extractions yielded no effect, water extraction, no effect, alcohol extraction, no effect aside from that of the alcohol. The samples appear to be entirely inert, for pharmacological purposes at least. The next measure is obvious enough. All accounts of this mushroom's effects appear to be limited to experiences within a Tulgey Wood. Therefore, I should try consuming the extracts while I am within a Tulgey Wood. If there is still no effect, then I will need to recheck my identification skills. If there is an effect, I'm not certain where to proceed next. Entry 6. I have borrowed an isolated cabin from a friend. I have food and water enough for several days. The location is an intermediate depth of the Greater Widdershins Tulgey Wood. By the mundane calendar, it is now the morning of August the 6th. I shall begin with the water extract. 5 milliliters should be sufficient. The smell has returned. There is also a vile color and texture evident within the extract. However, all extracts were thoroughly sterilized before and after preparation. It is now the evening, same day, I hope. The day has been unsettling, to say the least. Within 30 minutes after imbibing, my surroundings appeared to change. The cabin was no longer a snug, warm, cozy sort of place. It lost all of its rustic charm and became little more than a dilapidated shack made of rotting boards lashed together and held in place by bloated, spongy fungoid growth. There was a heavy miasma in the air, a cloying unpleasantness with the fetid tang of mildew. Outside, the forest had lost most of its brighter, more vivid coloration. If anything, the fungal fruiting bodies had become larger and more profuse. The trees seemed half-rotted, though, barely clinging to life, with gaps in their structures filled in by the omnipresent fungus. I didn't dare to venture outdoors, as the forest was certainly not empty. I heard innumerable noises, none of which were especially pleasant. There were suggestions of movement within the undergrowth, but I never saw any clear forms. I'm somewhat relieved at this. I don't think I wanted to clearly see what was suggested by the stray glimpses. Mercifully, the effect began to wear off after about 5 hours. Within an hour's time, things had apparently returned to normal. I will try the other 2 extract forms over the next 2 days. With luck, this will at least establish a proper baseline for probable effects and durations. That said, I am not looking forward to this particular set of experiments. Entry 7. I have proceeded to a particularly large tumbledown, incorporating multiple raised structures above the tree line. I'm not anxious to repeat the experiment within the forest just yet. The oil extract proved to be the most potent and the longest lasting, so I will only use that particular extract in this place. Hopefully, I can improvise adequate shelter in the event that some of the larger predators come calling. That said, my cloak is freshly relined, and I have included an additional layer of tum-tum bark, so I should hopefully fall well beneath notice. This is more and more perplexing. As before, the forest became considerably less colorful and far more fungal. I had expected the Tumbledown ruins to take on a similar rotting malevolence to what I saw in the cottage. However, the opposite appears to be the case. I am writing, even now, while still under the influence of the extract. The stonework here feels more pristine than it did before. It is as though I am sitting atop an island of light surrounded by a dark and brooding sea. I can make little sense of it. If this is a hallucinogen that emphasizes frightening or disturbing imagery, why should these ruins in particular be any different? Perhaps it is a form of self-suggestion, as I am comfortable in this place. Then again, I felt comfortable enough back in that cottage. The sun is setting. I think I'll just enjoy the spectacle for now. Entry 8. Sometimes I wonder if we are too eager to find answers. The compulsion to know what is unknown, to see what is hidden. It's powerful for some, and it's led to many good things, but it could be argued we've summoned up plenty of nightmares along with our more pleasant dreams. I was curious. Damnably enough, I still am. Yesterday, I found a small swarm of momraths. In all the Tulgey Wood, there are no other creatures that are so elusive. Not that they're difficult to find. They're simply impossible to capture. So I decided to risk a small dose of extract and see what they might look like with different eyes. It was not pleasant. I lack the words to properly describe. If one could take the unnerving motions of a spider, the coiling sharpness of a centipede, and the viscous malleability of a leech, one might at least approach what I saw. The things began to move. I followed at a distance. Others joined the swarm, gathering together. The world became darker about me. It felt like I was entering one of the shadowed patches of the forest. Difficult to be certain at the time. What I saw next I cannot properly describe. It is the sort of thing one really shouldn't describe in detail, at least not in polite company. Really, though, I could scarcely understand what I was actually seeing. The creatures, the momraths, began to interact with one another. It was horrible. It was as if, all at once, they were devouring one another, fusing together, splitting and entangling together in a deranged riot of invertebrate romance. I'm not ashamed to say that I left after only a brief glimpse of such goings-on. I think it was for the best not to see any more of that. I saw enough other things in the forest. Harmless, I think, but not at all pleasant to look at either. The extract has worn off, much to my relief, and yet I can't help but wonder. A new line of reasoning has been slowly forming after all of this. I've started to think of the various creatures in this forest, and I noticed something quite odd. Nearly every name of every plant, every animal, even every sort of mushroom, every name has 3 syllables. Whether one word or two, it is always 3. The slithy toves, the glimber toves, the bandersnatch, the jabberwock, the scrivenwort, the shandycap. I can think of only one single exception, and that is the momraths. Why? I suspect they are incomplete creatures, maybe something like a larval form or possibly an alternate generation, like the tiny gametophytes that ferns grow from. So what sort of thing grows from a momrath swarm? I think I need to go back and see what I can find. Entry 9. I returned to the dark patch. It was easily recognized as such without the extract in my system. Funny thing is, it still felt the same. Things feel the same deep down, with or without that bit of chemistry. It felt like every shadow patch feels. That sense like you're a little kid who's gotten somewhere they're not supposed to be, trespassing on private property, sneaking into someone else's home and hoping the owners don't notice you. There was something else here, though. I couldn't see anything really out of place, but there was an especially large tangle of dead brush and what looked like the remnants of a fallen tree. Then I took the extract, just a small amount, maybe an hour's dosage. Shortly thereafter, I was standing in front of something that I can scarcely explain. It was a large organic shape, seemingly inert but not at all motionless. It was bubbling strangely. It felt very much alive and almost aware. It seemed to be looking at its surroundings, though half asleep. If I had to speculate, it seems to be something like an egg or perhaps a chrysalis, the product of whatever the momraths were doing. No trace of those creatures remains now, just this, whatever it is, or whatever they are becoming. There is something familiar about the presence there. I hope I am wrong. I will need to return until I can see what sort of imago emerges from this cocoon. Entry 10. I sit here, not daring to move, cowering in my flimsy cloak of tum-tum weave, praying it will be enough to conceal me. The thing has moved off, and I think it will not be returning. Still, I know it caught my scent. I'm rambling. I should stop that. I have returned to the dark patch, to the chrysalis, several times now until this most recent visit. I could tell it was near to hatching. I stayed to watch what emerged. With every visit, the cocoon changed subtly. I began to notice more clearly its connection to the ground below, fibrous structures tying it into the underlying earth. Or not the earth, perhaps. I suspect it was connected to the fungal growth that permeates this place. Not just this patch, but the entirety of the Tulgey Wood. Funny how the fungus is so much denser and more prominent in the dark patches. This thing seemed almost like an outgrowth of that fungal life, like it was being nourished as it slowly metamorphosed. I watched as the shell cracked open. I saw the long, gangly limbs stretch outward beneath the twisted branches, reaching toward a baleful sky. That shape, that blasphemous form. It was like a spider, and yet it was entirely different. Something akin to a centipede, yet not even remotely similar. It stretched and groaned and burbled. Luminous eyes gazed about, but I could see they weren't truly eyes. Even as they looked into my eyes, I saw they were blind. Just another illusion, as my mind tried to make sense of a creature with senses unknown to me. They say the visage of the Jabberwock is terrible. I say it is worse when you see it unveiled. It makes no sense. a protoplasmic form as though a shadow had taken on its own life, a viscous thing of slime and corded muscle, an exoskeletal horror without a face. Some say the Jabberwock is the top predator of a Tulgey Wood, a creature that alters the entire ecosystem. I think it is more than this. It is a manifestation of the forest's will. I should leave this place as soon as I can make myself move again. The sun is getting low. I need better shelter before the night closes in. Entry 11. I never thought a tumbledown would be such a welcome refuge. It has been a long, mostly sleepless night, and dawn cannot be far off now. What little sleep I've had was plagued by nightmares. I fear there may be a worrisome meaning beneath these dark dreams. I've had time to gather my thoughts, though I can only speculate. Wild speculation, baseless theorizing. Many of my old professors would look quite narrowly on me if they saw me in this state. Enough worrying over the opinions of ghosts. 2 theories of note have emerged from my thought processes. First, the Jabberwock and the Momraths. I suspect that the Momraths are something like a larval form for the Jabberwock. That doesn't really capture the essence of the relationship, but it's a reasonable approximation. The creatures swarm throughout the Tulgey Wood, gathering information. They then aggregate like amoebas forming a cellular slime mold. There is an intervening period of metamorphosis, while the developing Jabberwock is connected deeply with the fungal network in the soil below. When it emerges, it is driven by a series of instincts based upon the collective Momrath observations. It hunts down whatever it is supposed to in order to cleanse the forest. Predators will often weed out the weak, the sickly, the aberrant forms in prey populations. Perhaps the Jabberwock is a more refined version of this, something like a macabre gardener or a ghoulish sort of shepherd. It culls the flock, it prunes the branches. To what end, though? If the nightmares are to be believed, and what fool believes any old thing they dream, still I wonder, what if all of the fungal growth in a Tulgey Wood is connected? What if it is somehow aware? Not a human awareness, a very alien sort of awareness, but it still wants things to be a certain way. Perhaps the Jabberwock is an agent to further whatever goals this fungal consciousness might have. Then where does the dreamer's bane come into this? There are certain types of fungus that live as parasites upon other fungal species. Maybe it's something like that. Perhaps it doesn't induce hallucinations, but instead purges them. Living in a Tulgey Wood, we are surrounded by fungus. We breathe in the spores. We feed on the bread mushrooms. Any number of potential routes for introducing soft, ongoing hallucinations. What if we are all of us lotus eaters wandering about in a collective delirium? I should leave the forest, get back to more normal realms, before properly reasoning all of this out. Entry 12. I cannot escape. It won't let me leave. It knows that I know. Evidence of accuracy, so it would seem. They only come after you when you've found the truth. Thoughts are muddled. I haven't slept. It's been, I think, 2 days now. I tried to leave. Followed all the paths. They led nowhere. Led deeper into the forest, further from the realms of sanity. Everywhere I tried to turn around, go down better paths, the Jabberwocks were there. And their minions, the hateful little birds that spy for them, the loathsome bandersnatches that tidy up their messes, even the Momraths, especially the Momraths. The outgrabe, it isn't a warning cry. Why would a warning cry incapacitate as an outgrabe does? It is a snare for the prey, a call to bring in the Jabberwock. So narrowly missed that time. I am being hunted, herded, corralled, like a piece of livestock, an errant sheep gone astray from the flock. No more to be sheared for wool, it's the butcher's block for me. And maddeningly, so very maddening, the pageantry, the whimsy, the fungal pantomime. A grinning clown with a switchblade behind its back. It's all veiled behind a painted curtain. The forest itself is watching the play. It stalks the simpletons and laughs at their delusions. We believe we are free here. We are the rulers of this realm, or at least its caretakers. No, this place has other caretakers, older caretakers. It snared us all in its dreaming, and it sips dreams in turn from our fevered minds. That is the wool it harvests from our heads, a dreaming mushroom addicted to dreams. The extract is nearly run dry. I haven't dared to let the veil be pulled over my eyes again, yet I am nearly out of time. One last chance. It is not a human mind. Perhaps it has none of our pettiness. Perhaps, if I am very lucky, it is in some way a calculating creature. I can forget. One last measure, a phial of potent amnestic, sufficient to wipe the past several months clean, a desperate resort. I'll hide this record away in a tumbledown, hide it all away. Such knowledge should not cease to be. Such terrible truths perhaps should be hidden, but never lost. Then, when I wake, just a brief message to myself. Leave and ask no questions. Look upon nothing too closely, only leave and never return. Or else, if this does not work, I shall be devoured, culled as livestock that grew too wise. Epilogue. This was the final entry, and the most difficult to properly decipher. By this time, the encryption was wavering in the writer's mind. Using other information, I was able to find the individual who most likely wrote the record. Charlotte and I paid him a visit yesterday afternoon. We spoke until well after dark, and ended up spending the night in a guest room. A most hospitable host, though troubled by what we'd brought. He confirmed his handwriting and the nature of the ciphers he used in the record. He also noted a familiarity in some of the images we showed him. Apparently, such things linger in half-forgotten dreams. By his account, all of this happened a couple of decades ago now. He awoke in a tumbledown with several missing weeks of time. A simple note was in his pocket. It instructed him to leave the Tulgey Wood forthwith and not return. There was a brief phrase included, which he had long ago said as a sort of self-verification and an indicator of some urgency. So he departed without question. Apparently it was a remarkably easy journey, and the forest seemed quite pleasant. It was tempting to stay, despite the warning, but such enticements really only served to strengthen his resolve. As to the rest of the evening's conversation, it may be reasonably summarized by the final theory that he offered. This theory encompasses the history of the various Tulgey Woods, their basic underlying nature, and the role of the Jabberwocks. Long ago, when the liminal biomes were first formed as bridges to other realms, the Tulgey Woods were settled by various intrepid souls. They built remarkable civilizations, shining cities hidden away among the trees. There were likely many acres of farmland cleared to support such burgeoning populations. Then something strange occurred, likely in the deepest portions of the biome near to the threshold of the other reality. A peculiar sort of sapient fungus appeared. Maybe it is a resident of that reality, or perhaps it was spawned by the collision of that realm with our own. Whatever its origin, it spread rapidly among the tree roots. The effects on humans were profound. It induced a sort of altered state of consciousness, compelling certain individuals to forsake the trappings of city life and complicated societies. These rugged individualists founded the settlements that have persisted ever since. As for those who were unaffected or unpersuaded, the most strong-willed were likely culled in the end. Just a series of chance encounters with Jabberwocks and other predators. In time, all that was left was the more acceptable humans. It is possible that at least some fled from the biome as soon as they grasped the danger. That is, if they were ever given the chance. It was this explorer's speculation that the fungus feeds on dreams after a fashion, possibly as a matter of material sustenance, given the unearthly nature of the adjoining realm. At the very least, a consciousness that encompasses an entire landscape might want something to keep its thoughts occupied. It might be as simple as boredom in the end. It cultivates domesticated humans as a shepherd might watch over a flock of complacent sheep. Some might find this objectionable, myself included, but Charlotte did offer a somewhat different interpretation. If the residents of the Tulgey Woods are happy there and live meaningful lives, then perhaps this so-called domestication is a good thing. At the very least, this hypothetical consciousness does not seem especially cruel. It let the explorer go, after all, once he'd forgotten the knowledge that might threaten the fungal hegemony. As for myself, I do not feel altogether qualified to pass any sort of real judgment on the matter. If it is a true mutualism where both participants are benefiting, it is difficult to object. Still, I wonder, though, about the lives taken in the process of protecting this arrangement. Of course, it is possible, and it is my hope, that all of this is nothing more than a passing nightmare, a wild hallucination brought about by an improvised drug of sorts. That said, I don't intend to revisit any Tulgey Wood in the future. As for Charlotte, she is as yet undecided. Part of her yearns for home, and part of her fears to return now. I have plans to visit some of the other liminal biomes, and I will ask if she would like to accompany me. Even if such places are unfamiliar to her, she has good survival instincts. Perhaps we might enjoy a few more adventures together if she is willing to continue keeping me out of trouble.